I spent 3 days traveling all over Jeju Island as part of a month-long trip to Japan and South Korea. Jeju was very different from my expectations in both wonderful and less exciting ways. Jeju is a small island, yet it requires planning to navigate. There are several ways to get around. There are buses, which work well, but take navigation savvy and eat up precious touring time. You can rent a car, but need an international driver's license. There are taxis, but they are not as easy to hail when you get to more remote locations and are expensive if you are going from one side of the island to the other. There are some Ubers, but are mostly limited to Jeju City. There are guided tours, which means you are at the mercy of the group's speed of travel, or you can do what I did and hire a driver/guide for your trip. My travel agent booked a package deal for the 3 days I was in Jeju, and it maximized my time and simplified my travel. Since my travel agent booked it, I can't tell you the exact cost, but after traveling around the island, I think it was a smart way to go. If you have limited time on the island and are only going to a few sites, then there might be cheaper options. However, if you plan on covering the island, then you might want to investigate hiring a driver. In my 3 days on Jeju, I managed to see 15 sites, and I felt like I had seen just about everything on my list. The guide divided the travel in regions of the island to minimize drive time. I'll share these sites with you day by day and in the order I visited them, so you can perhaps follow the same route. And once again, I'll apologize in advance for my poor Korean pronunciation. Day 1. I flew from Busan to Jeju in economy on Korean Air. There are numerous flights to Jeju from the mainland all day long, so it was a quick and easy trip. The driver picked me up and immediately took me to the Dongmun market in downtown Jeju City. There were stall after stall of tangerine and fish. Interesting combination. So I bought some tangerines and tried a fish cake for the first time, which comes on a skewer. It was better than I thought it would be. A nice quick snack. The driver then took me to a mini restaurant for lunch within the market that was very homey and the food was good. It wasn't a place I would have wandered into on my own, so it was nice to have the guide's recommendation. We then drove to the Jeju Stone Park and Museum. The museum has comprehensive information on the volcanoes. It has fantastic volcanic rock specimens that are set up like an art gallery. For any science and geology buffs out there, this would be the place for you. Just outside the museum, there is also a sky pool where people take their shoes off and wade in. It gets its name because you can see the reflection of the sky. The surrounding stone park is amazing, with volcanic terrain and all sorts of stone monuments and structures. The park also has these volcanic statues called Dol Horabanga. The statues are thought to protect and provide fertility and are considered guardians of the island. We walked quite a distance around the park, but I did notice they had a tram if you'd rather not walk. Then we drove about 5 minutes away to Sangumburi, a volcanic crater. The entrance and buildings were all made from volcanic stone and were quite impressive. It was a slow, gradual walk to the top of the crater. The entire area was gorgeous. And once at the top, you are rewarded with beautiful views of the valley. Here are some more images of the park and scenery. We then went to Boromwat Field, which has an outdoor field with crops such as lavender and buckwheat. After visiting so many botanical gardens during my travels, I was a little underwhelmed. However, I could see that this place has the potential to be spectacular when everything is in full bloom. There were only a couple areas in bloom when I visited, so if you plan to go, check to see what plants are flowering at that specific time of year. However, even if there isn't much in bloom, there is a pretty indoor flower garden, a train ride for children, and a lovely cafe. So it's still a nice place to hang out and enjoy some refreshment. Day 2. On this day, we drove a distance to my favorite destination on Jeju, tropical Hallim Park. It is a stunningly beautiful park with numerous areas, lava caves, wildflowers, interesting trees, lily ponds, and the best bonsai garden I had ever seen. This bonsai is over 300 years old. There was also a greenhouse that had a huge cactus garden. The park was full of surprises, including rocks that looked like sculptures, petrified wood, and peacocks. You could certainly spend an entire day here. There's a nice cafe on the grounds as well as a gift shop. We then drove to Songaksan Mountain. We walked down and then up some elevation along a cliff that offered some scenic coastline views. It was incredibly windy out. I had just bought a new hat and had to hold it on my head. You can continue higher up the mountain if you want an athletic challenge, but we stopped halfway and that was good for me. After lunch at a local cafe, we headed to Sanbangsan Mountain, meaning mountain with a cave. It is home to Sanbanggulsa Temple, a small temple located at the foot of the mountain where a Buddha statue is enshrined. If you've been following my Japan and South Korea videos, you know I saw a plethora of temples on this trip. What stood out to me at this one is that the main gold Buddha sat in such a beautiful setting with panoramic views of the ocean. I also thought the hundreds of mini Buddhas lined up like soldiers was an interesting sight. There were several other buildings and structures on the grounds with lovely gardens and walkways. Here are a few more images of the temple. We then headed to Seogwipo, which is on the southern side of the island. We visited two waterfalls in the region. The first one was the Cheonjiyeon Waterfall. We parked and then walked about a half mile through a delightful park, following a pathway that paralleled a stream or river. The waterfall was majestic and sent a nice spray of water on the hot day. On our way out, we encountered this cute scene, a mother goose watching her goslings' valiant efforts to follow her up a small waterfall. We were all rooting for them, but alas, they never made it, so Mom came back down. We then got back in the car and drove to Jeongbang Waterfall. To get to this one, we had to hike down some stairs along the coast. This waterfall was huge and created a deafening but beautiful sound. It is the only waterfall in Korea that falls directly into the ocean, and the steep cliffs and old pine trees surrounding it create a picturesque backdrop. Day 3, we drove about 40 minutes to Hallim Beach. I noticed they put a covering over the beach in order to keep the sand from blowing. We walked up the coast about a half a mile. As is typical in South Korea, they have beautifully built and maintained walking paths, although many require a small fee for tourists but are free to locals. We walked far enough to take in the views looking back at Hallim Beach. It had started to rain, so we changed our itinerary. We went to the Haenyeo Museum, which is all about the history and story of the Haenyeo divers. If you haven't heard of them before, it's worth a visit to the museum to learn more. The Haenyeo divers are all women and have been free diving for seafood for over 500 years. It is an interesting story and culture that is passed down for generations. However, the guide told me it is dying out because the younger generation doesn't want to do it. I asked why they didn't scuba dive, and he said it is such a strong tradition in Korea that they outlawed scuba diving for scavenging to protect the Haenyeo divers tradition. The museum was wonderfully laid out with film, displays, and artifacts. We then drove to Sunrise Peak. It is another place that had a lovely coastal walk where they charge for the pleasure of hiking along the shore. Notice the grandfathers marking the entrance to the path. It was a beautiful walk along the coastline. We didn't walk all the way to the top of the volcano since we were short on time, but we still had gorgeous views of the cliffs and rocky coastline. It was raining as we drove to our next destination, the Bijarim Forest. It isn't a huge park, and it is a good place to walk an hour-long loop trail. However, the rain was making the walk less inviting, even with an umbrella, so I cut the visit short. It is a popular place for tourists since it is a beautiful area with an easy walking path. So that completed my 3 marvelous days of touring on Jeju. There were so many beautiful parks and nature spots I hadn't anticipated. Since Jeju is a popular spot for Koreans to vacation, I expected a beach or resort community. There are those places on Jeju, but I stayed in Jeju City, which is just like a typical city with stores, cafes, bars, and hotels. It is only about 10 minutes from the airport, so it is a central place to base your touring. I'm sure my travel agent booked me here for convenience. So if you're going to Jeju to enjoy the beach, there are better places to book a hotel than Jeju City. However, if you want more nightlife, easy shopping, and convenience to transportation, then Jeju City is a smart place to lodge. This is my final video of my journey to Japan and South Korea. Please see my other videos of the trip. I have left links in the description. As always, if you have questions, feel free to ask in the comments section and/or join the new Facebook travel forum. I have left a link to it as well. And if you'd like to follow my senior and solo travel journeys, please like and subscribe. Cheers!